Do you really believe God is calling you? Yes. Okay. Then if you're really believing that, then you have to believe that God's going to take care of whatever it is that you have need for.
You're listening to For the City, a podcast of Gospel City Church. We're committed to loving God, loving people, and making disciples of all nations. In this season, we're sharing real stories of God at work in the lives of His people. Stories that remind us that His grace is still changing hearts and shaping His people today. We're glad you're here. This is Season 4.
Well, hey guys, good morning. And we are in this season of For the City podcast where we're having conversations with people in our church. And it's been really just exciting for me. I'm hearing great feedback from listeners and different individuals in our church who are just thankful to hear what God has done in the lives of different members here at Gospel City. And I always say, you know, I sit down across the table with people often as a pastor, and I often leave wishing, man, I wish everyone in my church could hear that conversation. Today, we have a really cool opportunity to hear from a good friend, Russ Fish, who is a member in our church. Welcome, Russ.
Hey, thank you. Good to be here. You
and I have shared several meals, breakfast meals across the table over the last several years. And I'm excited to talk a little bit about your life and just what you mean to me and what you mean to our church. But you have kind of a cool, unique story of how you're here. So before we get there, though, why don't you just tell us, your name's Russ, and tell us about your wife and your family a little bit, and then we'll maybe talk about how you came to know the Lord.
Great. Yeah, I've been married to Nancy for 59 years, and that's a lifetime. Yeah,
that's amazing.
It is.
59.
And as we always joke, we've been the happiest 53 years of our life. But through that marriage, we've had two children. Charlie is our oldest son, and he's in the area, lives in Edwardsburg. Has a business, lawn care and snow plowing, which is good right now.
Yeah. Yes. And Snowpocalypse 26.
That's right. And my daughter, Jenny, who lives over just west of the bypass by the Dinosaur Museum. And she has 4 kids. My son has 2, and both of them are in the Air Force. One's full-time, one's National Guard, and going to Purdue. And my daughter has 4 children. One lives in Oklahoma. One is graduating this year from Holy Cross. One is getting married in October, and the other one just turned 16 and is introducing him to cars.
Okay.
And
busy. Yeah.
It's a busy family, but we're fortunate that they all live in the area except the one in Oklahoma.
So you grew up here, right?
We both, Nancy and I, grew up in Fort Wayne.
Okay.
We met in high school, and that's when we knew each other, but we started dating a little later than that.
You went to Bethel University?
Bethel University. And I was a late student, meaning that I was in my mid-30s when I went back, or when I went to Bethel.
What'd you go to school for?
Pastoral ministries.
Yes. And that's part of your story a little bit we'll get to here soon. Why don't you, real quick, tell us a little bit about how you came to know Jesus?
Yeah. Well, it's a story that unfolded, and I wasn't aware of it. Basically, it was I lived in a household that I had a mom and dad who loved me, but they weren't believers, and they were of the era of, they graduated from high school in the 40s, though they didn't graduate, they both dropped out, actually. My dad dropped out and went to Harvester international harvester, and then joined the Navy when World War II broke out, served in the Navy. My mom dropped out and worked at AT&T. But the thing about it is that my dad came home from the Navy with PTSD, which was not diagnosed at that time, and had a lot of issues. He was an alcoholic. He clinically depressed, but his father was too. Had the alcohol issues and that, and I kind of resembled that. I mean, when I watched my dad, the only time he seemed like he was having fun was when he was drinking with his friends, and that was their good time. And so I always thought that was how you had a good time. Right. And then a lot of things transpired through that, and but we had Charlie. And when he was 2, it kind of dawned on me I needed to change. And so I tried changing and myself, and I'd quit drinking, but I'd still go out after work and shoot pool and come home late and those kinds of things. And I wasn't a very good father or a very good husband. And things started to unfold in my life. We had moved to Angola and had the opportunity. Well, first of all, we moved to Angola and we lived in a duplex. And then Charlie was born at that time. And my wife's background is Lutheran, and so they did infant baptism. So we had him baptized at the local Lutheran church. I met that pastor. And soon afterwards, he asked us if we would like to move out to their campground, because they had a campground with a lake, and the local university students used to come out there and party once the camp closed in the fall. And so they liked somebody to live there. So we did. And so we moved out there and felt that because we were at the Lutheran campground, we probably ought to go to the Lutheran church. And so we did, and met some nice people. And, you know, it was a different environment for me. I mean, it was nice and had an influence on me. And then we got transferred over to the South Bend area and lived in a trailer park up in Niles, and met a couple, and her dad was a Nazarene pastor, retired, and actually deceased at that time. And they had just returned from Germany. He was in the army there, and they were looking for a church, and we hooked up with them and started looking for a church, and we'd go to a church and then afterwards have breakfast and, you know, slice and dice it and you know, figure out if it's something we wanted to go back for. And we did. We found a little Free Methodist church, and people there's about 40 people in attendance, and we hooked up with them pretty well. And but I was still in an environment at work where there was a lot of drinking and a lot of, you know, after work activities and so forth, and I just knew I had to change. And emotionally, it just almost destroyed me. And and I actually was watching TV and had a pastor on there, and at that moment prayed and accepted Christ into my life. The next Sunday at church, there was an altar call, and went forward and prayed and said.
It's kind of amazing. Like you have, I'm sure a lot of people have walked this journey or lived this, but you have, you know, your dad's dad, living a life without the Lord, and then you pick up on those behaviors and some of those things, the legacy or the chain, and you know, you said you got to the point where you're like, I have to change, and you tried to change specific behaviors, but it didn't change your heart. It didn't change your status with God.
Right.
And then your I think that's the bad company corrupts good morals comes to mind. It's
Right.
like you started realizing, well, I'm changing this, but I'm still hanging out with the same people who think the same way and do the same things. And then it's just a testament that God chases us down. It's his faithfulness, like that night in your house watching TV. Incredible that the Lord can use a pastor on a TV to intersect
Right.
our hearts and bring us to life. And then he had already provided you the mechanism, the church, the people around you. So you went forward, gave your life to the Lord,
Right.
and never looked back.
No, it was. I wish I could say that, but I mean, it was a struggle.
Yeah.
I mean, the Lord was there, and He had provided some entry points, like with the Lutheran pastor and the camp and the people I met there, and this couple that we met in Niles, and they're still our best friends. Well, he is. She's passed, but it was it was a struggle. I mean, I prayed a lot, and it wasn't an overnight miracle. It was deep embedded. I think it was sort of like Paul, who still struggled with the world, even though he was, what did he write, about a third of the New Testament? But he still struggled with life. And I think we all still struggle with life. And I had a lot of things to struggle with, but they were, it wasn't me overcoming it. When the Lord brought things to my mind that I had to deal with, then He was there with me, and it was a lot easier to get over those bumps.
Yeah.
Where was Nancy kind of in all of that?
In the bedroom praying.
Amen.
Yeah, she actually accepted Christ as a teenager, and but I wooed her away, and the whole thing about being married to like kind. We were very, very fortunate, I would say.
Yeah.
Because usually it works the other way around, and it did for a while. I mean, I had, she quit going to church and all that stuff, and we were just living a life of, what's happening today.
Right.
And, how can we do something fun and what appeared to be fun. And, but she, and one thing I think that held our marriage together during those initial years was when we went through marriage counseling, and it was at the Lutheran Church because of their Lutheran background. The pastor, about the only thing I ever remember he said or asked us to do was that we would never, ever consider divorce as an answer to a problem.
Yeah, amen.
And that always stuck with me and with Nancy.
Yeah.
And I think that's got us through a lot of initial hard times, because it'd been very easy and appropriate probably for her to just take a walk.
Right.
And but I always say she's my personal missionary. And she,
Praise the Lord.
and,
It's cool. Yeah, it's cool. Like you said, you got saved. I can't remember the phrase you used, but you kind of came not by your own means and unaware sort of thing. Like just the Lord intersected you that night, and justification happens in an instant, right? We stand redeemed before the Lord, but then this slow process of progressive sanctification begins, where God's weeding out all of the sin and the heart, and then we recognize really quickly, like, my flesh opposes the spirit, kind of like Paul says, and then you're doing that battle. But something must have jumped between that night that you were justified before the Lord, then the slow process of sanctification, which you're still in, but you then took the leap to go to Bethel for pastoral ministry. So like what shifted in your brain of like, okay, the Lord's done work on me. I belong to God. Now I want to serve his kingdom.
Right. We had moved from Niles to South Bend and bought a home down here and started going to a local church. And they would bring in people like celebrities from time to time to minister to the congregation. And one year they brought in a team from the Methodist Church, and I forget the name of that ministry, but it was couples that would come in, and probably 5 or 6 couples came in, and they would do anything the church needed. They'd do the nursery, so nursery workers could go to church. They'd come in and clean. If we wanted that, anything we wanted, they would do in the church. And we had one of those couples stay with us for that week. And so they stayed, and it was a good experience, I think, for the church and for everybody. And about 6 months later, Nancy and I are sitting at the table, and I said to Nancy, do you ever feel like we might be called to full-time service? And she said, yeah. Ever since that couple stayed in our house, I've been thinking that maybe we need to take a step and do something that God has gifted us with. Wow. And I said, yeah, that's about the same time that I've felt. And I had an insurance agency at that time that was doing pretty well. And so I went and talked to our pastor, and he said, just resist it as much as you can. Which I thought, are you kidding me?
Pastors will be straight with you.
Yeah, I was ready to jump in the pulpit the next week and start preaching, And I said, well, why would you say that? And he said, well, you need to resist a call like that just because you have to make sure that you're called. Huh. And you'll know if you're no longer challenged by your business interest, and it's just not there anymore.
Can't do anything else.
And so can't do it. And so I probably went back, and 7 or 8 months later, it was still a call. And I really did think that I could just transition from that into church ministry, and so I went over and talked to the district superintendent of the denomination, and he said, well, we don't license or ordain anybody that doesn't have a 4-year degree. And I thought, really? And,
so you were going for it. You're like, give me a church today.
Yeah, I was ready, And
I like the faith.
Yeah.
And the boldness.
And so, I went home and told Nance, and she said, okay, we'll do it. And there was no second thought or anything. And we had some nice cars. I had a Cadillac, and I had a 61 Corvette. And it was like, okay, this get us through the first year. And so we sold those. Yeah.
Wow.
And that's how I got there.
Okay, so that's like that's a big, that's like a big step of faith, treasure in heaven, sell your possessions, go to the Lord kind of moment. Yeah. That's a big deal.
It was a big deal.
You had a business, you sold the business, or just?
The insurance agency, you don't actually, it was American Family, which is like State Farm or whatever.
Okay,
If you leave, you leave. You just walk away from it. You don't get any residuals or anything. So that was gone.
Huh.
And, but it was, and the strange thing about it is that we never once thought that we were nuts or crazy. This is just what you got to do to get what God's calling you to do. Amen. And
there's a little bit of like, leaving the nets type thing when Jesus calls his disciples. Like there was probably like, father's sitting there with his sons, and they're like, "We're done, Dad. Like, we're out. Like, leaving the business, leaving the boats, the nets, everything, and going."
Right.
So I think, man, testament to faith and the peace that God would give you to not be like, "We're crazy. This isn't going to work." Like,
Right.
I think you had a confidence that the Lord was going to do it. So that led, like, I'm curious with Methodist Church. How'd Bethel come into play? Was it just in the area, and that was good?
I was never in the Methodist church.
Okay, got it.
Okay, I was always in the missionary church.
Missionary church. Okay.
When we moved to South Bend, we started attending a missionary church.
Missionary church. Okay, gotcha. So that was the connection to Bethel.
That was the
Yeah,
connection.
Okay,
Plus, it was the only Christian college other than
Yeah.
Notre Dame.
close by. Yeah.
So real quick, what would you say, as you recount on that moment in your life, what would you say to somebody who's in the position where they may feel, I want to follow the Lord.
Right.
The Lord's calling me to ministry. The Lord's calling me to take a step of faith, but I'm holding on to this, or I'm stuck in this, or where's it going to come from, or I don't want to give up these things. Like, what would you say? Would your advice be resist it as long as you can? And then, I mean, it wasn't horrible advice, it sounds like, because it confirmed the call.
Right.
But yeah, what would you say to someone like that?
Well, first of all, you just have to kind of question them where their faith's at. Do you really believe God is calling you? Yes. Okay. Then if you're really believing that, then you have to believe that God's going to take care of whatever it is that you have need for going through this transition. And are you willing to live lower than you're living now? Or, is that an issue for you and your family? And I can remember talking with NASA when initially, they were deciding to go to Hawaii to start a church. And he said, "Man, Russ," he said, "those houses over there cost $1 million, and I don't know where this is going to happen." And he said, "But we think we should go, but I'm just worried about my family and so forth." And I kind of shared with him what God had done for us as far as replacing those cars and housing and different situations and so forth.
Yeah.
I said, "God will take care of it, don't worry." And then when they got over there and was finalizing it, and this house showed up for them, basically out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And it was just perfect and all that stuff. He said, "Yeah, you're right."
Man, that's great.
Yeah.
I love that stuff.
Yeah.
And you don't look back. You don't look back and say, "Oh, that was a dumb decision." You're like, "Oh, following the Lord was the best decision you've ever made."
Oh, yeah. Not only for serving the Lord, but the experiences that we had. Worldwide, we were able to travel and meet some great people around the world, and so personally, it was very fulfilling, and then, but spiritually, it was great. When we were in Canada, we were at a church, and I'll jump to Canada now. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. My first church was in Canada.
Wow.
Okay.
Because when I graduated from Bethel University, it was at a time where the economy wasn't good, and all the pastors who'd left the ministry had returned to the ministry because that was a job for them.
Right.
And so there was a guy that came down from Canada, the district superintendent of Ontario, and he was searching Bethel University for potential pastors to go to Canada. And I got to talking to him, and it worked out that, that's a great story in itself, but we ended up going to Canada as our first church, and being there, and we were only there about 20 months, and but we had seen close to 20 young people, and this is a small church, when we went there, they were running about 75, and historically they would bounce from 75 to about 125, fall back, and just bounce back and forth between those numbers. And so in 20 months, we had seen close to 20 young people go to the mission field out of a church that small.
Wow.
The baptisms, the salvations and baptisms were very, very high, and saw a lot of people get saved. We reached the university crowd and built up a pretty decent university attendance. Wow. And so you see those things, and those, even though it didn't last long, because they were ready to go back to 75, it was on their schedule, I think. And but it was at that time we moved back here, and before we went up there, I talked with Dr. Kletzing about starting a church in Granger. And but we just didn't have the families.
Yeah.
And
so for listeners, Doc Kletzing is the man who lives across the field of our church, so the barn across the field. And him and Nancy are still members of this church, and you had a good relationship with him. This is where the story gets super cool.
Super cool.
So go ahead. You come back down here with Dr. Dan. You're talking about starting a church.
And so we're starting a church, and he had gathered 7 families.
Okay.
And so not having a church or a place to go after we moved back here, we thought 7 families was a good start. Yeah. And so we met in somebody's house for a couple of weeks, and then they got what used to be Gene Van's dance studio over in Mishawaka. I forget what it's called now, but it's behind IHOP there on Edison.
Yeah. Okay.
And we met there for quite a while, and grew. But funny side story was one of the couples who came regularly brought her mom one day, and being a dance studio, they had mirrors along 2 walls. It was just all mirrors. And so her mom's sitting at the end of the aisle, and she looks over, and then she taps her daughter, and her mom's in her 80s, and taps her daughter and says, "Missy, there's a lady over there with the same dress on I have."
During church.
Just a little side track there.
That'd be the most distracting place to go to church, probably. Yeah. You're seeing rows and rows of people.
Yeah, we just double attendance.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Pastor math.
Yeah.
Pastor math.
That's great.
So anyway, so we did that, and then I forget where I'm going now, but so we did that, and then we moved out to Knollwood. We got the banquet room out there on Sunday because they have like a double banquet room. At least they did then, and one they weren't using. And so they rented it to us, and we'd have services out there.
Did your church have a name at the time?
We started out being called the New Church.
Okay.
Because we didn't have a name, and we wanted to be a Granger church. And so we kind of avoided choosing a name, being at Gene Van's and that kind of stuff. And so the district would publish a newsletter every month, and they'd list all the churches and their attendance. Well, we didn't have a name, so the superintendent would call us this is the New Church, and then have our attendant. Yeah. So it caught on, and so we were the New Church, and it worked out for us because we'd get visitors who'd come to see if we were a cult or something. And I said, what is the new church?
New church, yeah.
And how long can you be the new church? I'm thinking forever. But then we changed it to the Cornerstone, and so it became known as Cornerstone.
Yeah.
And we were in the storefront where Penny's Home Center used to be.
Yeah.
So we rented 3 units there, and we're there for 3 years. I think that's what our lease was. And then we, Doc Kletzing and his wife Nancy, made us a great deal on the church property here on Hickory. Yeah. And so we moved up here and built the first building. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, though, for me, that was the first Sunday in the building here was my last Sunday with Cornerstone. Mm. So we started the church Easter Sunday in 1986, I think. Yeah, 1986. We had our first service, Easter, and my last one was Easter Sunday, 1993. And so...
Okay. So let me... First off, that's a hard ending.
Yeah.
First day in a new building is tough. Let me recap for if listeners don't know. So the building we're sitting in is the building y'all built from your church. Yeah. Not with all the add-ons and all of that, but this is Cornerstone Church.
Same plot of land.
That's correct.
And you were the first pastor of Cornerstone Church, planted in Granger, started as the new church, and became Cornerstone Church.
Correct.
That church started in 1986, which is the year I was born.
Crazy.
Which is kind of crazy to think, because I definitely never thought I'd be living in Indiana.
Right.
And you were here pastoring Cornerstone Church, and then you're here on Hickory Road, and then the Lord took you somewhere else. Right. And I know you faithfully pastored in this community for a long time at River Valley and some other churches, right. and got to work in the mission field and some of those things. Right. But let me just fast forward the timeline a little bit. So that was 93 that you left this
93,
this building.
Yes.
And then in 2009, Gospel City was planted over on North Point Elementary School.
Yeah. Cherry Road.
Yeah, on Cherry Road in Granger. Mm-hmm. Brent was there as a worship leader, and Pastor Trent Griffith was the founding senior pastor. He was trying to plant a new church in Granger as well. Mm-hmm. And
kind of similar, there was a couple gathering some families.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Meeting not in a building, in a home, and needed a pastor. And Trent answered the call to that, and they're kind of like, all right, let's start something. So they go to North Point and start things up.
Yeah.
And then 3 years kind of into that endeavor.
Yeah, so we were similar to you guys. Like, we were in a gym and trying to just be faithful to...
Not as cool as a dance studio.
Not as cool as a dance studio. Above the stage, though, it did say, reach for the stars, not drugs.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Every week, which I thought was...
Elementary gymnasium.
Amazing. But we met there at the church, at the school. Well, then 3 years in, so 2009, 2010, actually 2011, we were at like 400 people in that gym, and we were just praying that the Lord would supply a building. But then Cornerstone Church, which we weren't super familiar with, but there was a group of people, 30 to 40 people here at this church on Hickory Road, Doc Kletzing and his wife being one of them. Mm-hmm. And they had a pastor at the time, and some of our people started meeting with that pastor. But over time, that pastor moved on from Cornerstone. And we remember the day, I think I was in a meeting at Martin's with Pastor Trent and some others, and there was a day that came together where it was like, hey, you guys have all these people and no building. We have a building and no pastor. What if you guys adopt us and move into this facility? And we were praying for that. We were praying for a building, and we were thankful that the Lord led this church, Cornerstone, to pray for a pastor and a people. And that's a step of faith too, because it was like opening hands. Mm-hmm. And then here comes, so we move in 2011. We didn't move in till we built on to the worship center so that it sat 600 people instead of 250 people. Right. And we were able to move in, and then we've just grown with this facility in this place. And it's probably changed a lot from 1993, right, the first day that you guys moved in. But I just think, first off, that's a cool testament of you being the first pastor at Cornerstone, the faithfulness that you had to leave a business, sell cars, follow the Lord in your 30s to go into ministry, go to Canada, move back to your hometown, and try to start up a church. Mm-hmm. And then the Lord, you had some faithful, fruitful years, and then that time ended here. But let's fast forward now to a couple years ago, almost 4 years ago. How'd you end up back here? Like, what happened when you rolled past Hickory Road? Because you probably didn't come past here very often, right?
Right. We had actually moved out of the area. We'd moved to southern Michigan. The Lord blessed us with a place on the lake, and so we were pretty comfortable there. But it came time to retire. And we needed to sell our place on the lake, and our son and his wife bought it from us.
Oh, wow.
And so we were, and because of some medical issues that Nance had, we wanted to get closer to our medical team. Mm-hmm. And so we were going to move back to South Bend and wanted to be relatively close to Memorial, but far enough from not being in the inner city. And so we're driving around looking at places, and we had thought we had found a place over in Georgetown. And so we're driving to check the area out, and drove down Hickory for the first time in about 20-some years, maybe 30 years, I don't know. Huh. And wow, what happened? Yeah. And we saw Gospel City, and we had heard, because we'd stayed in touch with the Kletzings, we'd heard that you guys had merged, but had no idea what the outcome was. And I tried to stay uninvolved. I didn't, when we left, I didn't want to influence anybody else to leave.
Sure.
And so forth. And so through that, it just grew and grew, and we just avoided anything that Cornerstone was doing, and had no idea really, except the few times we'd get together with Kletzings. And so we saw this huge church, because it was right after COVID, and you guys had added the new auditorium on. And it catches your attention when you drive down Hickory. And so we thought, well, we'll try that. We'd not been in and didn't know anything. And so we moved into our house. The next Sunday, we thought we'd try Gospel City. And we came, and it happened to be the Sunday that Pastor Trent announced he and his wife were leaving. They were going to Florida.
Your first Sunday.
Yeah, very first Sunday. The pastor's leaving, and so forth. And so, but we later learned he was leaving for a good reason.
Yeah.
To get involved in a family ministry in Florida and so forth. But Nancy and I went home that Sunday, and I said, well, what do you think? And she says, I really liked it. Yeah. And I said, what do you think about the pastor leaving the first Sunday we're there? And she says, yeah, I know. Usually that's not a good sign, but I kind of liked it. And I said, yeah, me too. And so we came back, and the next time we came back, because we were gone a couple of Sundays, and that was the Sunday that Pastor Trent and I forget his wife's name.
Andrea.
were on the stage with the table and they're talking about their ministry, and I'm thinking, okay, I want to hear the pastor speak, and so it was interesting to learn how the church operated, because they didn't have anybody really lined up, and they started rotating the elders and the staff, and we could see that it was a very disciplined and very well-established staff and ministry, and that it was a healthy church. And then you'd look at the bulletin and see what the budget was, the weekly budget, and usually it was always met or exceeded, and that's always a sign of a good, healthy church. And and we've been here ever since. 5 years, almost 5 years later. We're still here and still love it.
Yeah. So somewhere in there, like I remember I was obviously wrestling in that next 6 months. The day that Pastor Trent and Andrea sat at that table and talked about the next ministry the Lord was calling them to, after 13 faithful years here and putting this church here and leading, it was like I came back from a sabbatical where I had been wrestling. Lord, are you changing the course of my life, and do I need to let go of some things that I am comfortable in and love, and do I need to trust you and be stretched in something different? And so that began a process of working with the elders for the next 6 months until I became lead pastor and started preaching in that season more. But somewhere in there, you came to a staff meeting, and I heard this story that you were the first pastor at Cornerstone, and then you hadn't driven by the church in 30 years, and then you did, and now you're here.
Right.
And I was like encouraged by that, and I think that's when we started getting breakfast and just talking a little bit about ministry, and you encouraging me, and what has kept you at Gospel City over the last 5 years? Like, why do you and Nancy love it? Why did it bring you here? Why do you want to be an encouragement to staff? Those sorts of things.
I think we're still here because God wants us still here. He hasn't put in any anxiety or anything in our heart that we need to be someplace else. And but it ministers to us. The philosophy of preaching here, of Bible-centered, and every week Christ is the target to land on, and plus, even though we've been in church ministry a long time, we're still growing under this ministry, and we're still being taught, we're still being challenged. You have opportunity to do a lot of things. I mean, for me, I have the opportunity now. I teach at an assisted living facility on almost every Sunday morning, but we can still attend the second service. Became part of a men's breakfast that bring some kind of a challenge every week, and then a home group. And so we and Nancy's in a women's group that meets almost every week. And so there's just a lot of things that we can be involved in, either receiving or giving. It's not one or the other, but it's both. And I mean, it's just where God wants us. I mean, it's just,
that's awesome.
Super cool. I think, again, a testament, just the cool tying threads that the Lord does of even you leaving, and then the Lord is doing what he wants to do among his people at Cornerstone while he's also shaping and forming you. And then to bring you back, and for your first Sunday to be walking into the space that you left, and then you see another pastor leaving, but pulling on a young guy who was born when you started the church, and everything. And now you get to take
so many cool things.
You're just taking a different seat, right? And I think what I'm hearing is you're like, the Lord's still using me. Like, I'm not done. Like, I'm retired. But I'm not on the shelf. I'm plugging in where I can. I may not be in a pulpit preaching every week, but you're sitting in the right environments. And I think that's a testament to what life is following the Lord. Is that until we draw our last breath, what are we supposed to be doing? How can we be not just receiving, but pouring out?
Right.
And it really does. It's like it kind of ties this story together, which kind of as we're wrapping up, you wrote this all down and captured it in a book that's coming out here pretty soon. So just share a little bit about,
a happy ending,
which really kind of, when you think about the story of what it shouldn't have been that, and maybe didn't feel like that in the moment of leaving. But the Lord, I think the verse that comes to mind when I hear that is, God works all things together for good. For those who love him. And so as you followed the Lord and done that, so kind of just share a little bit about the book, what led you to write a book, and kind of what you're hoping that does for people.
Yeah. It started probably 3 years ago or so when I got to thinking that neither one of my kids or my grandkids know much about my life prior to me becoming a Christian.
Yeah.
Now, my son occasionally runs into old friends of mine who tells him stories about when I was with your dad, we did this and we did that. So he knew a little bit about that and some other things. But so I decided that I would write like a memoir just for my kids and my grandkids.
Yeah.
And the more I wrote and the more I considered what was being written, I thought it might be a book that people could find encouragement, hope, that doesn't matter where you're at in life, God is there to use you and change your life if you need to change.
Yeah.
And if you don't need necessarily to make a drastic change, the ways that he can use you and the possibilities that are out there for anybody to get involved in his work.
I commend you on the effort. You've talked to me about this over the last couple years, and it's cool to see it in print. You have on here kind of the subtitle, A Life of a Redeemed Rebel. And in the preface of the book, you talk about the dash a little bit. What's the dash?
Yeah. The dash is, I think her name is Linda Ellis, wrote a poem about the dash. And the dash is the little thing between the date you were born and the date that you died. And how small that is, but how significant it is. Yeah. And that as you look at your dash, are you happy with it? And would you like it to be better, basically? Yeah. And so for people in my family, like grandparents and parents and myself and maybe a few others, I would make an account of their life, and then I'd say, happy with dash, probably died, not happy with their dash, Yeah. And so, you can judge your life, the significance of your life by your dash. And that dash takes on a significant part of motivation and drive. And if you want a great dash, serve a great God.
Yeah, amen, man. I think a CT stud, one life will soon be past, but only what's done for Christ will last. Yeah. And so you got a short time, life's a vapor, here today, gone tomorrow. And once that dash ends, you're off on and into eternity, and there's only two places to go, really. And so now's the time to get your eyes on Christ. But this is coming out in March.
March 10th is the release date. and you can pre-order it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, but you have to do it online. You can't go into Barnes & Noble and pre-order, but if you have any interest in it, it helps me if you pre-order.
Yeah.
Because the more pre-orders, then the more the bookstores stock it.
Yeah.
And
yeah, and part of like this podcast even is helping a big church feel a little smaller, you know? So I'm sure there's listeners who don't go to our church, but if you listen and you go to Gospel City and you see Russ and Nancy in the congregation, I can't encourage you enough to go and find them, talk to them about the story, anything that stuck out about Russ's story, you can ask them about, and you can ask them about the book, and maybe it'll bless you as you continue to follow the Lord too.
Yeah. Thanks, Russ, for sharing your story. Thanks for being willing, and thank you for the foundation that you were a part of. I know it was the Lord through you, and you probably, I would, if I was in your shoes, look around and marvel and go, that's not all what I thought this would look like. But
right. And you know, and just to add, when I left, you know, I had no idea why God was showing me the door. Because there's nothing moral or any real concrete reason. But it was just time to go.
Yeah.
And never in my wildest dreams would I have thought that God had a plan like this, to take that seed and to do His job with it. But bless this church.
Thanks for listening to For the City. It's been an honor to share how God is at work in the lives of His people. If today's episode encouraged you, we'd love for you to send it to a friend. And make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Until next time, you can find out more at mygospelcity.org.